How much soy sauce does it take to turn a dead fishing spot into a feeding zone in under 10 minutes? Less than you think. About 2 tablespoons, roughly what comes in 3 of those little packets from a Chinese takeout order. That small amount, poured into the water next to your bait, creates a chemical signal so close to actual dying baitfish that predator species can't tell the difference. And in at least 15 states, doing exactly that is a citable offense under anti-chumming statutes, which is worth understanding before you try it. The mechanism behind soy sauce isn't scent, isn't flavor, and isn't some vague fish-like salt explanation that people throw around online. It's nucleotides, specifically inosinic acid, a compound that exists naturally in the muscle tissue of every baitfish, crawdad, and aquatic insect in the lake. When those organisms die and their cells start breaking down, inosinic acid floods into the surrounding water. It's one of the earliest and strongest chemical signatures of a fresh kill. Soy sauce is loaded with it, a natural byproduct of the fermentation process that turns soybeans into the dark liquid in the bottle. Pour soy sauce into the water, and to every predator fish within sensing range, something just died, right where your bait is sitting. I learned this from a 12-year-old, not joking. I was fishing a public dock on Dale Hollow Lake, right on the Tennessee-Kentucky border, about 4 years ago. Caught nothing for 2 hours. This kid shows up with his grandfather, pulls out a small bottle of kikamin from a tackle box, pours a little into the water, and within 15 minutes, he's catching bluegill after bluegill while I'm still staring at a dead rod tip. I watched him do this 3 times at 3 different spots along the dock. Every time fish showed up. I finally walked over, and his grandfather just laughed and said, "Been doing this since Korea." Didn't explain further. Didn't need to. We're going to cover the specific chemistry that makes this work, why cheap soy sauce actually outperforms the expensive stuff for this, how to use it legally in every situation, and how to apply it 2 different ways depending on what species you're after. And near the end, I'll show you how to turn soy sauce into a long-lasting paste that you can mold directly onto a jig head, something that stays on for an hour of casting instead of dispersing in the first 5 minutes. The nucleotide science needs a quick explanation, because once you understand it, you'll see why soy sauce works differently from every other kitchen item trick on the internet. Your body knows inosinic acid, even if you've never heard the name. It's one of the 2 compounds responsible for what food scientists call umami, that deep savory taste you get from aged steak, Parmesan cheese, and mushrooms. The other compound is guanylic acid. When inosinic acid and guanylic acid show up together, they create a synergistic effect where the perceived intensity multiplies rather than just adding together. 8 times stronger than either compound alone, according to research published by the Umami Information Center in Tokyo, which has been studying this interaction since the 1980s. Soy sauce contains both. Naturally brewed soy sauce, the kind fermented over months with actual soybeans, develops both inosinic acid and guanylic acid during the aspergillus mold fermentation stage. The finished product has roughly 800 to 900 milligrams of combined nucleotides per 100 milliliters. For comparison, fresh-killed shad muscle tissue contains about 300 milligrams per 100 grams. Soy sauce is roughly 3 times more concentrated in the exact compounds that signal fresh kill to every predator in the water. Fish detect these nucleotides through specialized taste cells in their nasal rosettes, those paired openings on the snout that constantly sample incoming water. But what makes nucleotide detection different from how fish process other dissolved compounds is speed. A 2009 study from Kagoshima University in Japan, published in Fisheries Science, measured neural response times in sea bass exposed to inosinic acid versus standard protein breakdown compounds. The nucleotide triggered a detectable neural response in roughly 0.3 seconds. Standard scent compounds took between 1.2 and 1.8 seconds. That speed difference matters because it means fish orient toward a nucleotide source faster, reach it sooner, and are more likely to commit before the signal disperses. Think about what that means for your fishing. You've had mornings where fish are following your bait but not committing. You see a wake behind your lure. You feel a tap, but nothing sticks. The fish are interested, but something is missing from the eat this signal. In a lot of those situations, the visual presentation is right, but the chemical confirmation is absent or too slow. The fish tracks your bait, gets close enough to sample the water around it, doesn't get the chemical green light fast enough, and peels off. A nucleotide source on or near your bait shortens that decision window. The fish tracks, samples, gets an instant confirmation, and eats. The sodium content in soy sauce, which runs about 5,700 milligrams per tablespoon, roughly 2.5 times saltier than seawater, plays a role too, but not the one most people assume. It doesn't attract fish through taste. What it does is create a localized osmotic disruption. Fish maintain a careful balance of salt and water in their tissues through their gills. When they swim through a pocket of water that's suddenly much saltier than the surrounding lake, their gill membranes detect the shift, and the fish stops to investigate. Not because it's hungry, because its body is reacting to an unexpected change in the water chemistry. That pause, even if it's only a second or two, happens right next to your bait. And while the fish is paused and processing the osmotic shift, the nucleotides hit its nasal rosettes. Now it's paused and receiving a fresh kill signal. That combination is what produces the aggressive strikes that guys report when they use this. People keep asking about the banned in 15 states, claim floating around online needs context, because it's both true and misleading at the same time. Pouring any liquid or substance into a body of water to attract fish is classified as chumming in most state wildlife codes. And yes, chumming is restricted or outright prohibited in roughly 15 states, including Texas, Florida, Montana, Pennsylvania, and several others. The laws vary. Some ban all chumming in all waters. Some allow it in salt water, but not fresh water. Some allow it in private ponds, but not public lakes. A few only ban it during specific seasons or for specific species. But treating your bait with soy sauce before you cast it is a different legal question entirely. Applying a scent, soak, or treatment to your lure or soft plastic is legal in every state I've been able to verify. It's no different from using factory-scented plastics or commercial spray attractants. The legal line is between putting substance into the water as chum versus putting it on your bait as an attractant. Soaking your soft plastics in soy sauce and fishing them? Legal everywhere. Pouring soy sauce directly into the lake? Check your state regulations first, because in some places that's a fine. The pour method, where it is legal, works best in one specific scenario. Bank fishing near structure, meaning docks, fallen timber, riprap, which is the chunky rock lining along dam walls, and shoreline reinforcement, anything that creates cover and shade where fish gather. You pour 1 to 2 tablespoons, about the amount in a standard medicine cup, into the water roughly 5 feet upstream or upcurrent of the structure. The soy sauce disperses as a dark plume that drifts toward the structure and creates a nucleotide gradient fish can follow. One thing to watch for is the color of the plume. In clear water, soy sauce creates a visible dark cloud that can actually spook wary fish if it's too concentrated. If you can see the plume clearly from shore, you use too much. The ideal amount creates a faint brown tint that dissipates within about 30 seconds visually, but lingers chemically for much longer. In stained water, this isn't an issue because the dark color blends right in. Think of it like laying a trail of breadcrumbs from open water straight to where your bait is waiting. Within about 5 to 10 minutes, depending on current speed, you'll often see increased activity near the structure. Bluegill show up first, then the predators that feed on bluegill. If you're enjoying this so far, subscribe. We've got more of these coming. Soaking your baits is the approach that's legal everywhere, and honestly, more effective for most situations. Fill a sandwich-sized Ziploc bag with your soft plastics of choice, add about 3 tablespoons of soy sauce, seal it with the air squeezed out, and let it sit for at least 1 hour. 2 hours is better. The soy sauce penetrates the porous surface of the plastic and creates a bait that releases nucleotides continuously for 30 to 45 minutes per cast. I prefer Yum dingers for this, the 5-inch size, about the length from your thumb tip to just past your wrist. They're a stick bait, a simple, straight, cigar-shaped soft plastic that sinks horizontally with a subtle shimmy. The YUM plastic formula seems to absorb soy sauce better than some other brands, and the bait takes on a slightly darker tint that actually looks more natural in stained water. Rig it wacky style, which means hooking it through the middle of the body with a small finesse hook, a size 1 or 1/0 Gamakatsu finesse wide gap, and let it fall on a slack line. The combination of the natural shimmy action and the nucleotide release during the fall is extremely effective. Cheap soy sauce works better than the premium bottles, and the reason is counterintuitive. Budget soy sauce, the kind that costs $1.50 for a big bottle at any grocery store, is typically made using a faster chemical hydrolysis process rather than the months-long natural fermentation of premium brands. This rapid process actually leaves more free nucleotides intact in the final product, because the slower traditional fermentation gives bacteria more time to consume and convert those compounds into other byproducts. The expensive, traditionally brewed Kikkoman tastes better on your rice. The cheap store brand puts out a stronger nucleotide signal in the water. Save the good stuff for dinner. One other detail on soy sauce selection: avoid low-sodium versions entirely. The reduced sodium changes the osmotic disruption effect and cuts the salt concentration below the threshold, where it meaningfully triggers gill membrane detection. Regular sodium, cheapest brand on the shelf. That's your fishing soy sauce. The species that responds most dramatically is one that rarely gets attention in these types of videos. Carp. Common carp, those big bronze-scaled fish that can run anywhere from 5 to 30 pounds in most American waters, are nucleotide detection machines. Their barbels, 2 fleshy whisker-like protrusions on each side of the mouth, contain some of the highest concentrations of taste receptor cells of any freshwater fish. Carp are bottom feeders that locate food primarily through chemical detection in murky, silty conditions where vision is nearly useless. A soy sauce plume on the bottom of a lake is almost irresistible to them. A carp angler on Lake Champlain in Vermont, a guy who fishes European-style carp competitions, told me he switched from his regular boilie, a dense round bait about the size of a marble made from eggs, flour, and fish meal, dipped in commercial carp attractant, to boilies soaked in soy sauce. Over a full season of competition, his average fish weight per session increased from about 14 pounds to roughly 19 pounds. He attributed it to the larger, more wary carp in the lake responding to the nucleotide signal, where they'd learned to ignore the standard commercial attractant profiles that every competitor was using. Bass respond well too, particularly in stained water during the pre-dawn and post-sunset windows when they're actively feeding, and chemical detection takes priority over vision. Smallmouth, in particular, seem to key on the nucleotide signal, possibly because their natural diet leans heavily toward crawdads, and cracking open a crawdad shell releases a burst of inosinic acid into the surrounding water. A soy sauce-soaked soft plastic mimics that exact chemical event. For largemouth in stained water, I've had the best results with a slow, dragging retrieve along the bottom. Let the bait sit, pull it about 6 inches, roughly the length of a dollar bill, and let it sit again for 5 to 10 seconds. Each time the bait moves, it releases a fresh microburst of nucleotides into the water column. Each time it pauses, fish have a moment to zero in on the source. The stop-and-go cadence matters. A constant retrieve disperses the signal into a thin, continuous ribbon that's harder for fish to pinpoint. The pauses create concentrated pockets that fish can track like stepping stones straight to your hook. Where this approach completely falls apart is in rivers and streams with moderate to heavy current. Any current above about half a mile per hour, enough to visibly move a leaf floating on the surface, disperses the soy sauce too quickly for a meaningful concentration to build near your bait. The nucleotide plume stretches into a thin ribbon that gets diluted below the detection threshold within a few feet of your hook. In those moving water situations, switch to a physical bait, cut shad, which is a freshly sliced piece of a gizzard or threadfin shad, or live minnows on a split-shot rig, a small pinch-on lead weight clamped to your line about 18 inches above the hook, roughly the distance from your elbow to your fingertips. Live and cut bait generates its own chemical signal continuously through natural tissue breakdown, and it does so at a volume that competes with current dilution. Spring turnover is the other condition to avoid entirely. Turnover is that period, usually a week or two in early spring, when the water temperature equalizes from top to bottom, and the entire water column mixes violently. Surface water that's been sitting on top all winter sinks as it warms and reaches the same density as the deeper layers. Bottom water rises, and the whole lake becomes a churning blend of different temperatures, dissolved gases, and suspended sediment. The water looks muddy, smells off, and fish behave erratically because their environment is in chaos. Chemical signals during turnover are wildly unpredictable. Your soy sauce plume gets pulled in 3 directions at once, rises, sinks, and disperses in patterns that don't create a followable trail for fish. I tried this during turnover on West Point Lake in Georgia 2 springs ago, and went 3 outings without the treatment producing any measurable advantage over untreated baits. Wait until the lake stabilizes after turnover, which you can confirm by checking surface temperature readings over 3 or 4 consecutive days and seeing consistent numbers, and then bring the soy sauce back out. Once the water column settles, the advantage returns immediately. This is the part I kept testing for months because I didn't believe the first few results. It sounded too convenient. But the data kept coming back the same way, and I'd be lying if I said it didn't change how I prep for every trip now. Mix 3 tablespoons of soy sauce with 1 tablespoon of plain flour and 1 teaspoon of table salt. Stir it into a thick paste, about the consistency of peanut butter. That paste can be molded directly onto a jig head, packed into the crevices of a creature bait, or rolled into a small ball and threaded onto a hook. The flour acts as a binder that slows water penetration, and the salt further thickens the matrix. Instead of dispersing in 5 minutes like liquid soy sauce, this paste holds together for 45 minutes to over an hour in still water. In a light current, figure about 30 minutes. I fished this paste on a 1/4-ounce football jig, about the weight of a AA battery, with a Christie craw trailer along Rocky Points on Center Hill Lake in Middle Tennessee last October. Over 3 mornings, I averaged 6.2 smallmouth per outing with the paste-treated jig compared to 2.4 per outing the previous 3 mornings with the same jig untreated. Same spots, same retrieve, same time of day. The treated mornings produced fish that averaged about a half-pound heavier per fish too, which aligns with what the carp guy on Champlain noticed. Bigger fish were committing where smaller ones had been hesitant before. The cost math on this is almost embarrassing. A 15-ounce bottle of store-brand soy sauce runs about $1.50 and contains enough liquid for approximately 60 soaking sessions or 40 paste batches. A leading commercial fish attractant spray costs $10 to $12 for 4 ounces and lasts about 6 trips. Over a 30-trip season, the spray route costs you around $60. Soy sauce covers the same season for about 75 cents. Stretch that over 20 years of Saturday fishing, and you're looking at $1,200 on commercial attractants versus $15 on soy sauce. A bag of flour and a box of salt adds maybe another $4 total over that entire span. Next time you clean out the fridge and find that half-empty bottle of soy sauce from the last time you ordered takeout, don't toss it. Drop it in your tackle bag. One bottle, one Saturday morning, and a few soaked soft plastics. Fish the same water you always fish, and pay attention to the difference. The gap between a follow and a full commit, between a short strike and a fish that eats the whole bait, is about 3 tablespoons of something that's been sitting in your pantry this whole time. One trip. That's all it takes to see it for yourself.